Yes, name above all names, oh, worthy of all praise. And my heart will sing how great is our God. Yeah.
This is a city full of people of all ages and races, full of life. It is a city of nearly 280,000 from all corners of this earth. This is Newark, today, 350 years after its beginning. It holds a promise now, as it did during those first years of existence when its first settlers came here seeking freedom, a new life, and much promise. The original settlers came from Branford and Milford, Connecticut, in search of religious and political freedom, a sentiment still cherished today.
You know what, God? I'm asking you to order my footsteps, guide me where it is that I should be, bring me near to you. Just allow me to be in this church and for them to see what my gifts are. And I've been getting involved. And like I said, the sense of peace when I come in church is awesome.
The original settlers sought the same freedoms, sailing the Passaic River to settle in wooded terrain close to the Atlantic. When Southampton was annexed to the colony of Connecticut in 1666, in strong opposition, Reverend Abraham Pearson moved his people to Newark, where the first small church and meeting house were built. Some accounts say Captain Robert Treat accompanied that original group. And Abraham Pearson followed them in 1667 and became the church's first pastor. He was paid £80 per year. As Newark's original and first public building, the first structure stood on Broad Street, just opposite the current edifice. For the first 40 years of Newark, this meeting house was the setting for worship, town meetings, and military proceedings.
The church became the city. It was the city. There was no other buildings. It was only this building in the city of Newark.
All affairs of the town were held in the church.
And so what happened, in order to buy property in this area, they made it fixed so that you had to be a member of this church to even buy property in the city of Newark. To do anything of significance, if you weren't a member of this church, it was not, you couldn't do it.
The church saw no separation of its role in governing civically and leading the community spiritually. Young Joseph Johnson, at the age of 15, beat the drum to call families to worship.
My grandmother actually brought me here before my mother could even get out the hospital. So she would bring me to church every Sunday, and she would never miss one. And I just always went to the church as a child. No matter what week, I always came, and they just always brought me. It just became a tradition.
The seventh pastor of the church was the Reverend Aaron Burr Sr., father of Aaron Burr Jr., who fought the famous duel with Alexander Hamilton. Burr Sr.'s tenure lasted from December 1736 until the fall of 1755.
What a lot of people don't realize is that this church founded Newark, and it wasn't the other way around. And for the first 40 years of Newark's existence, the church was the government of Newark. Newark was a theocracy, and a lot of people don't realize that.
There was a Puritan tradition in New England during that time, which reflected the strict rules of the church. No work was conducted on a Sunday. Harsh weather struck the area in 1732 or 1733. One rainstorm lasted for several days, and when a break came, Colonel Josiah Ogden ran out, hitched up his horse Sally, harvested his wheat, and rushed it to the barn. Unfortunately, it happened to be on a Sunday, and someone reported the colonel's actions. Ogden was disciplined by the church. Some say he was kicked out of the church. Other reports have it that Colonel Ogden was defiant and said, "I'll have a church to attend if I have to build one," which he did, and the First Episcopal Church of Newark was formed. Differences continued between the two church bodies until, according to Reverend Dr. Alexander McWhorter, the Revolutionary War brought an end to their contentions, with both churches serving as hospitals for the injured. Dr. McWhorter was a patriot, and during his pastorate served as a chaplain in the Patriot Army. The third church building was completed under his tenure. It was opened for worship on January 1st, 1791. Freestone for the church was quarried on Bloomfield Avenue. The mortar, made from clamshells left by Native Americans along the banks of Newark Bay, gave the building its Georgian colonial appearance. This church was nicknamed Old First Church. Reverend McWhorter served as pastor for 46 years until his death in 1807. He was a longtime friend of our first president, George Washington. He wrote a commemorative eulogy upon Washington's death, which was delivered at Old First Church.
How will this faith console the grieving heart, heal the wounded spirit, and dissipate more than half its sorrows? It will wipe the big tear from the eye, bind up the broken bone, illumine the gloom of the sad countenance, and cause the soul of mourning to rejoice.
McWhorter and Washington were friends, and it was rumored that he was being housed in the church. And so they thought that we were helping in the Revolutionary War, so they burned down the church. That was wicked.
Early Newark was the last attempt in the United States to establish a theocracy, a system where the church and government are the same. But Old First Church also went on to produce pastors who served as presidents of Princeton and Yale universities, as well as Williams College. Old First Church, the church at the Four Corners, was rumored to have been a regular stop on the Underground Railroad for Harriet Tubman and others.
They said Harriet Tubman passed through here. There's a room in here somewhere downstairs, and that's where the slaves hid. But I tell people that, they say, no, no, no. But when I was telling you about that, the lady that was in back of me, she said, oh yeah.
Now, I understand that it may have gone a lot further at one time, like to Market Street, but I don't know. I was very young at the time.
Following its early days, the church's history of pastoral appointments extended to the 1800s and drove the development of church community outreach, liberal giving, and establishing missions. In the 1900s, the church moved to an era of education and evangelism. During this time, the church renewed its Christian covenant and conducted outreach to the community and the tri-state area. Its motto became, "Many members, one body, Christ the head." Wartime noonday services were held to support our troops during World War II, condemning Hitler. Musical concerts were held in tribute to the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy in the 1960s. Revival mass meetings were held on a regular basis. Trustee Gilbert Brown, known for his compassion for others, forged a bond of friendship with St. James AME Church and the growing colored population in Newark. Old First Presbyterian Church sponsored Interracial Day, joined the Urban League and the NAACP. The church even sponsored a forum on the Negro in America. But in 1967, after the race riots in Newark, there was a tremendous decline in the church's membership as the population of the city began to change.
I'm now 50 years a member there. And through the years, I've seen changes in the church. I've seen ministers come and go. And the proudest I was when we received Reverend Glenn Missick, the first minister of color.
In 2013, the Reverend Glenn C. Missick was welcomed as the first African-American pastor of Old First Presbyterian Church. Reverend Missick engaged in community outreach, youth and laity ministries, and established the church's first internet and social media presence. He completed his pastoral assignment in the summer of 2016. the many faces of the church remain. Some who have been members for many years.
I was born into this church. My mother was a member before I was born, and all my brothers and sisters were members.
The church has been a friend to me in so many ways. I was the first of my family to migrate to the United States of America, or to leave home. And I was able to bring all my relatives.
The church's annual Thanksgiving dinner serves over 300 people from the surrounding community and routinely feeds all who come to Sunday services. Old First Church is a place where young people are made to feel safe and encouraged to participate.
I really like at Old First Church when the children are involved in activities. So I like when they're in the pageant, because I was in the Christmas pageant when I was younger, and so that's one of my strongest memories at Old First Church, and I want to see more of that.
I participate a lot in the church activities that we have. God has called me to become a director of our Christmas play, or we call it the Christmas pageant, which is the story about Jesus Christ's birth. And God called me and told me, you know, you should do something, you know, make a change.
People in my area where I live keep asking me, why do you keep going to a church in Newark? You know, they're very surprised when I tell them that. And I tell them how this church is really, you know, part of my heart and part of the family that, you know, keeps me going and keeps me strong. So it's a blessing to have found this church and the people that are here today.
This church is my life. On Saturdays, I look forward so much to coming here on Sunday. I put out my clothes, I put out my offering, I have my hair ready, everything. Go to bed Saturday night, only waiting for Sunday morning to get here so I could be here.
Today, Reverend Dr. James Perry Wooten serves as the interim pastor of Old First Presbyterian Church.
It's the church's responsibility to tell the people about Jesus Christ, which means that the people of this church should participate in the various activities of this community. Participate not only as citizens of the city of Newark, not only as interested participants in the life, but also as witnesses to Jesus Christ.
This is a church of radical welcome, serving all who come through our doors.
I know that we help people around the community. We do a lot for them. All they have to do is come in and we assist them, give them food, give them clothing, and direct them to where they can go for more assistance.
Old First Church is a wonderful place where I just have been able to grow, and it's always been a refuge for me. It's been a place where I would come during whatever was going on in my life, for good times and bad times. It was always a constant. And I'm grateful for this church and for the people that are here and for what I'm able to give back to it.
We reach out to the community to spread the message of Jesus Christ and heed the need of social and economic justice.